Okay, today I'm going to try and give you the whole history of film in about 5 minutes. I was going to try and do it in 4 minutes, but that just seemed kind of laughable because I would just be like reeling off words. So I have a cheat sheet in front of me, and I also have a stopwatch, and let's go. The first film was made in 1888. It was called The Roundhay Garden Scene. It was made by a man called Louis Le Prince, who was French, but the film was made in Britain. The first colour film was made in 1902 by a man called Edward Raymond Turner. It was his colour process, also made in Britain. The Lumiere brothers at this time were over in France with their camera process. They were filming things like their workers going to work and coming back and walls going up and falling down. But you've also got Georges Méliès, who was from a theatrical background. He made more creative films like Voyage dans le Lune. Over in New York you've got Thomas Edison, who made films that were quite serious and scientific, and the problem is all the theatrical people in New York were making films for artistic reasons, and there was a bit of a scuffle. Some of them went to Los Angeles. The scenery was better, the weather was better, so the film industry ended up moving to Los Angeles, and that's how that happened. And this time you've got D.W. Griffith making great waves of narrative cinema. You've also got people like Maya Deren and Alice Gay Blythe Shea, two women making film in a time when people thought women didn't make films. Now, Mack Sennett was in charge of Keystone Studios at this time. He was a great pioneer of slapstick comedy. He gave Charlie Chaplin his first break. And you know, slapstick comedy was very important at the time. There was no sound, everything was visual. Now in the 1920s you had German Expressionism cinema. You had people from it moving from the theatre into film, doing great kind of gothic things with scenery, making things like Nosferatu. In this time you've also got, in the USSR, you've got Soviet montage cinema. You've got people like Eisenstein making Battleship Potemkin. They were big believers in editing images together, juxtaposing them. The audience could glean their own meanings from them. In the late 20s, classical Hollywood cinema started and ran for a very long time, and this time you've got the first synchronised feature film in 1927 with Jazz Singer. Now in the 30s you move on to, you've got Warner Brothers making lots of gangster films, which were quite violent for the time, and that's when the Hays Code came in, or the Motion Picture Production Code. Now people go on a lot about this censorship and about how, you know, they had to keep one foot on the floor and they couldn't kiss for too long, like it was this really kind of aggressive censorship. But the fact is, all the American states had all their own different film boards, and they would edit your film as they saw fit. So the film that left Los Angeles wasn't the same film that was seen in Connecticut or the same film that was seen in Florida. So basically if you followed those guidelines, it meant that you could make the film you wanted to and everyone would see the same film. Now in wartime, of course, there wasn't any great big film movement. The only thing that we really think about is German socialist cinema, because the Nazis were putting so much money into cinema, and you've got people like Leni Riefenstahl making these big films. A woman in a powerful position in the film industry, she was making films for the Nazis. Anyway, in the late 40s you've got the Italians making neo-realist cinema, which is exactly what it sounds. They're making films about real people doing real things. It wasn't documentary, it was fiction. There were things like The Bicycle Thieves, and a man loses his bicycle, gets stolen, and he spends the whole film looking for his bicycle. And now in the 40s you've got film noir, and this was kind of a result of this kind of codified Hollywood. I mean, film noir is brilliant, it's dramatic and it's cool. You've also got, you know, the good guys win, the bad guys die, the women don't get to do anything, or if they do get to do anything, they get killed for it. Sometimes the good guys die as well. Now in this time you've also got, in moving on to the 1950s, you've got the Western, which is also a result of this codified Hollywood. You know, it was very moral, the good guys win, the bad guys die, women don't get to do anything, etc. Now in the late 50s and 60s you've got British kitchen sink realism. We've got films like Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, which were quite gritty and British and real. In this time we've also got Bond films popping up, and carry-on films and Ealing comedies, and it was a big thing for us. It's also called the British New Wave. In the 50s and 60s you've also got the French New Wave. You've got French film critics looking at things like American westerns, going, we love the westerns, we can do things like that, but we'll make them French. And they made films like A Bout de Souffle, which are pretty cool. Now in 1968 in Hollywood the code was sort of abandoned, no one was really using it anymore, and it was just as well because Hollywood was going down the spout. And this time you've got all these new filmmakers coming in. You've got Spielberg and you've got Coppola and you've got Lucas, and they've all been to film school and they've all seen European cinema, and they all bring over European cinematography and editing into Hollywood cinema. And you've got the American New Wave, and you've got great films like Bonnie and Clyde and Easy Rider. Now in the 70s you've also got the birth of the blockbuster. That starts coming through in the 80s. The Indiana Jones films are a big deal. But you've also got VHS, which is very important because the studios realised they didn't have to spend a lot of money on something going to the cinema. They could just spend a bit of money on something and it'd go on to VHS and anyone would watch it, and that's why you get all those kind of weird films from the 80s. Really weird, brilliant films, but made quite badly. In the 80s and 90s now is a big time for British cinema. because Margaret Thatcher took away funding and tax breaks and stuff for the film industry, but then started up Channel 4 and they gave money to Channel 4, and all the filmmakers were like, well, we'll just go to Channel 4 then. So you got people like Mike Leigh starting up in this time. Now in the 90s, you've got the Sundance Film Festival doing a lot of good business, because you've got people like Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino and Richard Linklater going there with their indie films. And then Harvey Weinstein came along and gave them money, and you suddenly realised they weren't independent anymore, they were just independent until they got money. Now in the 90s you've also got the Dogma Manifesto by the Danes. They were all about films being real violence, real sex. This isn't always a good thing, but you know, the film fest and it's fantastic. Now coming through to the noughties, everything, you can do everything now. The internet has opened everything up, everybody's got a camera. This means that a whole pile of bad stuff is being made into film, but also, sod it, 5 minutes 44, yeah, you guys weren't counting, except for the time bar, don't pay attention to the time bar. But you know, contemporary cinema, there's a lot of pulling back and forth. There's 3D films, and people think that people are scared of 3D because they think it's taking over everything else. Nothing's taking over anything else. We got indie films, suddenly people are paying attention to them. There's lots of films being made now, and everybody has access to it. It's all being democratized, which means lots of bad films are being made, but so many good films are being made. I mean, the real problem we have now, I meet people all the time who say the same kind of film is being made, you know, over and over again, and they're just not looking hard enough. You go to the cinema and you're just paying attention to what the cinema offers to you. Basically, you're going to watch the film that has the biggest publicity budget. You can't keep doing this and expect to see a variety of film. There are so many film outlets now. Netflix and Love Film and DVDs just available to all. Anyone can make a film, anyone can watch a film. So why are you still listening to what, you know, you go to the cinema, what, you think those are the only 7 films that were made? You have to start paying attention. Or if you don't want to start paying attention, you have to stop saying that, you know, films used to be better back then, because frankly the studio system, you know, they had a hard time, and the same kind of film was made over and over again. Just ask poor James Cagney, who had to make gangster films over and over again. He had no choice in it because he was contracted to them. If you want variety in cinema, it's there. You just have to go and look for it. And so, hey, what, I didn't make my time. You could have always just, you know, just cut off earlier. We could just stay till the end. Bye.